Hello viewers and welcome to another episode of the Stephen Mendes channel. Today we are going to look at several topics in this broadcast, and I want to assure my faithful followers who are looking for more synth type videos analyzing and showcasing the features of synths and sound that we are thinking of you, and that more videos for each of the devices that I showcase on this channel will be coming shortly. But as a result of the coronavirus and the current lockdown, I need to address several issues that callers have been speaking about. They asked me to talk in the broadcast about issues that concern them, namely 5G, RFID chipping, and what the world is going to be like in the wake of the coronavirus. Right now, everybody is living with uncertainty and a certain amount of fear. Do I look alarmed? Absolutely not, because I have a firm faith in God. A faith in God that people, sometimes even my own subscribers, find completely amusing. They think that all the world's problems are going to be solved by science, and any mention of God is in the realm of fairy tales. There is no God or gods coming to save us from our own madness, they say. And what their trust is in science and the rational ability of humans through science to solve all their own problems. And another thing that I was made aware of by one of my viewers is the United Nations Agenda 21, also called Agenda 2030. To which 170 of the nations have given their allegiance. Now, on the face of it, for those people who have not read between the lines or studied the actual document itself, it seems to be quite a wonderful utopian world that the humans hoped to build for themselves within the next few years. On the face of it, it seems that they're interested in the welfare of everybody. Clean water and food, sustainable energy, sustainable ecosystems, and the perfect utopian world that they were hoping for ever since the dawn of the scientific era. Well, people, as you know me by now, I give you the no-nonsense lowdown on this. I try to sidestep conspiracy theories. I try to debunk fake information. And I try to sift between the lines to find out reality and fiction. And I'm afraid that just like a lot of people share the rubbish that comes into them on social media without actually checking for its validity, a lot of you may have been duped by much of the videos that are presented on YouTube. And nowhere is this ambiguous position being exploited more than in the area of these things that people are inherently frightened of. People have a fear of microchipping humans and radiation results from various radio sources. Now, I've already made some videos about magnetic fields and electric fields and shown you a couple of devices that I own which will check for the presence of these fields in certain frequency bands. So I'm not going to really go there, but I'm just going to look at the reality of the situation within the next few minutes to put to bed some of the fears that people have, and then get back to working with my synths, which is what you all really want to see. Now, I don't have much respect for people who simply view this world from a physical point of view. I think it's very narrow-minded. And once we allow the spiritual point of view and we take the position that the material world and stuff that goes on in the material world is to a large extent governed by the spiritual planes, then we are sort of moving more in the direction of actual common sense. Because there is sufficient evidence throughout history to support and lend credence to the idea that in fact what goes on in this spiritual plane is synonymous with other realities which are open to anybody who will open their eyes and see. As I pointed out in the last video, historically we had no technology until about 150 years ago. And in a very, very short time, maybe within the last 5 or 10 years, it has grown exponentially than even what we had before. So clearly, people have now reached the point where they believe that humans can do anything. Now, maybe this coronavirus has tested them to the limit, because certainly it has government scrambling and it has healthcare authorities scratching their head as how to deal with it, while all the while it kills off a sizable and growing portion of the population. Now, many people express the optimism that science will hold all the answers. Ultimately, a vaccine will be found and the coronavirus will fade into the background and the world will carry on its merry way towards implementing this technological and utopian future that people feel they're going to have. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the reality of what happens. And you know it. Deep down inside, you know it. Optimism aside, we have to confess and realize when we look at the history of the planet that Earth has passed its golden age. And the human race is now confronted with problems the likes of which they've never seen on the whole history of the planet. And furthermore, the pushing of technology and the disconnection of humans from their biological past is creating a whole lot of new problems that never were there before. If you want to put it mildly, people are now living, and have been living for some time, a completely unnatural life. A life for which we were not designed and cannot sustain. In my left hand, I hold an electromagnetic radiation monitor by Cornet Microsystems. This device is capable of measuring electromagnetic fields. It's capable of measuring magnetic fields within a certain frequency range, and it's capable of measuring electrostatic fields that are generated by Wi-Fi and other radio sources within your home. And these are used by professionals when they come to reduce the radiation to which people are exposed. Now, there is a number of people who poo-poo the whole thing, and they say it's all pseudoscience. They take the point that all these electromagnetic radiations consist of non-ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation, of which the most familiar example is X-rays, are capable of stripping electrons from their atom. Therefore, they are capable of changing DNA and altering the molecular structure of human tissue. Maybe you should be careful how many X-rays you subject yourself to. That type of radiation, ionizing radiation, is classified as carcinogenic. The radiation that comes from cell phones is class 2 radiation. It's categorized as possibly carcinogenic, which means that they can't completely rule out the possibility that there could be some kind of damage to the humans. And because of this, every single cell phone that you purchase contains a SAR rating, usually on the back page, with a whole lot of fine print. And people think that it's just the telecommunications people like Apple, or in the case of Samsung, the other great producer of cellular devices, an opportunity for them to make sure that nobody sues them for anything. But in actual fact, it represents the difficulty that scientists face in trying to decide whether this radiation is damaging to humans or not. Numerous studies and numerous tests conducted since the cell phone became a reality have either been ambiguous or inconclusive, or there were factors involved in it that could possibly have biased the outcome. So it's pretty impossible to actually prove that the cell phone radiation is damaging to human health. And certainly in most people it doesn't do this damage in the short term. But since the cell phone systems have been around for a very short period of time, the final outcome may be a couple of generations later on. But once again, it's going to be very difficult to prove when you consider all the other stuff that's going on in the modern world, pollution in the food and water and air and other factors, and the complexity of the human organism itself. It becomes almost impossible to isolate it. These people who are saying that cell phones cannot possibly damage you and it's all in your mind really believe that the people who have been able to be affected by this and who have later shown improvement when they went into a Faraday cage, and you can Google on the internet for people who are more susceptible to electromagnetic radiation and who have had to alter their lifestyle and hire people to sweep their houses and make them immune to electromagnetic radiation so that these people can enjoy a better quality of life. They want to dismiss it as just basically the big problem that everybody has imagined. They're imagining these things, and the power of the hypochondria, that's the word I was looking for, the power of the hypochondria. They believe that these people think that this thing is doing them damage, and therefore it manifests itself in reality. And in fact, they make themselves sensitive to these electromagnetic radiations by hyping themselves up into this mental belief that these things are doing them harm. Whereas other people who don't care one way or the other don't seem to be impacted by the radiations. I myself have conducted numerous tests with the Wi-Fi on, with the Wi-Fi off, and all sorts of stuff around my house to see if these things had any effect on my mood, well-being, or my sleep. And my results have also been pretty inconclusive. So I can't say positively that it does or it doesn't. But what I can say to you is that it is a new technology. And with each new wave of technology, we are up in uncharted tests. We are now conducting experiments in the very life support systems of our planet and on our own bodies, and it's impossible to say what the outcome will be. In the old days, the farmers and the persons of old who pushed the oxen down the field before the age never had to breathe in the carbon monoxide and all the other pollutants that modern cities generate. They lived with cleaner air, healthier food, and healthier water to drink. That's a fact, not a piece of fiction. They didn't have all this wonderful hospital to support them when they're sick. And the thing about it is they lived, people say they didn't live as long, that they must have died young because they didn't have medical science to keep them alive into the age that we are able to achieve right now. But they certainly enjoyed, for the most part, a much healthier life. And I don't think that can be argued. Most people, if they really study history, would have to agree that that was the case. The modern person in today's technological world will probably live longer as a result of all the interventions, medical interventions which science is able to do. The drugs that they can be pumped with, all the machines that can keep them alive, and therefore it's not so much anymore a question of can we keep you alive, but it's a question of what is the quality of your life going to be like. There are millions of people living on this planet who are being kept alive by doctors and hospitals and medication and all sorts of interventions, but what is the quality of the life that they lead? And this is important to consider in any overall study of the quality of life that we experience as a result of our technological age. I, for myself, belong to the school of thought that we should try to be as natural as possible in our diets, in our habits, so that we may exude energy of our own and not have to depend on prop-ups in the form of drugs for one problem or the other. Good healthy eating, good healthy living is what we are interested in at Stephen Mendy's YouTube channel, which is why you find a lot of other topics on diet and health, and it will be increasing as time goes by. If you're enjoying the show, then please submit some comments that will guide us in making future videos. I'm an educator by profession, and I try to translate education to everything I do. I'm a specialist in electronics and a musical entrepreneur. I like to play, I like to create music and sound. And in addition to that, I like to also talk about these other things: health, hiking, and of course, spirituality. Because it's my feeling, based on my own personal experience with God, that in actual fact, God and a knowledge of God and a fellowship with God is able to overcome a lot of problems that humans face because of their own fallibility as humans. Basically, you need a higher power to free your mind from worrying about yourself, to free your mind from the fear of all these things that are happening on the planet, to guarantee you a good night's sleep in the middle of a pandemic or in the middle of a man-made or self-made crisis. You need a coping mechanism. And there is no healthier or better coping mechanism than the confidence that whatever happens to your physical body, God is looking out for you and looking after your welfare. Now, there are numerous people that are going to jump up at this point in the broadcast and say to me, but lots of Christians die. Lots of Christians are suffering. God doesn't protect people. They still have to go through the hell that everybody else goes through. What I'm saying to you is that regardless of what you have to go through on this planet, whether you're sailing through or whether you're suffering through, a fellowship with God gives you balance in all these circumstances. Job in the Bible suffered immensely, but God turned his fortunes around and his whole life was turned around when everybody was writing him off. So if today you are an invalid or you're suffering from some debilitating disease and you give your life to God and you realize that your life is valuable to God and you commit the balance of your life to Him and trust Him. The Bible speaks from start to finish about putting your trust in Almighty God. There have been cases where people have said, I trusted God and He let me down. God never lets anybody down. What really happened is that either you were not putting your trust in Him or you did not accept the outcome as His best for you. People only focus on the best based on what they want. God did not do what you wanted Him to do, so therefore you're not prepared to trust Him anymore. But Job said, though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. Now that is faith indeed. In the midst of his suffering, Job was not prepared to curse God, but recognized that God alone is the only person that he can turn to. So you have to be brought to the place where you realize that God is God, and regardless of the outcome, He's worth trusting because He's the only one that can really make a difference. That's the point I'm trying to make. When you give your life to God, you don't have to be frightened of anything and you will enjoy a better quality of life mentally. And He's able to look after your physical needs as well in wonderful ways. So I'm going to close the broadcast for today. I did not say all the things I wanted to say, but I hope you listened attentively to what I'm going to have to say. And I hope that you will realize that God and not science is your ultimate resource. Have a blessed day and stay safe in this COVID epidemic. See you in the next video.